In Perryville Industrial, they've done a good job to our city, but they have aerospace and places come in, so I don't know if they're gonna find a location.
And Katie did house, and then they were looking for a guy, a third person, to come back in the buses. John gets to chauffeur him.
Call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Monday, August 8th. Roll call, please.
Mark Hydrich.
Here.
Mark Leisner.
Here.
Mark Piontek.
Here.
Tom Holtmeyer.
Here.
Doug Hagedorn. John Boardman.
Here.
Chuck Watson.
Here.
Samantha Wacker. Carolyn Witt.
Here.
Mike Wood.
Here.
Sal Maniaci.
Here.
Jeff Keiser.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. First item on the agenda is the minutes from the August 8th, 2022 meeting. If you had a chance to review those,
Motion to approve.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Moving on to item number 3, file number 220901, Preliminary Plat, Marcia Nazari. I'm sorry about that.
Marcia Nazari.
Okay, Marcia Nazari. Beaker Heights. Sal.
Yes, your first item on the agenda tonight is just a simple preliminary plat. This lot is located on Beaker Road, south of Lexington Lane, and actually just north of our city limits there. It's an existing home and shed that's been there prior to a lot of the development that was done beforehand. It's all zoned, that property is zoned R1A, single-family residential, with a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. As you can see to the north and south, and actually directly across, there is some R2 duplex zoning. But in this case, they're not asking for the rezoning. They're just asking for a plat to subdivide that into 2 lots. And you can see there, both of them are proposed to be well over 10,000 square feet. And so we have no concerns with this. It does have access to water, sewer, has the appropriate easements. So we are recommend approval of the preliminary and final plat.
Any questions or comments by board? Anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move we approve.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to item number 4, file number 220902, annexation of 4.2 acres for Presbyterian Church Cemetery, Pottery Road. Sal?
Yes, we received a phone call from the Presbyterian Church about a month ago, just because of the annexation that's been going on around them and to the east specifically. If there's any reason that they should or should not come into the city limits, and we told them it's completely up to them, and they decided, obviously it's a tax exempt property anyway, and so we said, yeah, if you wanted to come in, that's no problem. They have no plans for any changes there, but just to help make the city limits uniform. You can see here, and this is an old zoning map. Once this platting's done here, it'll more accurately match, but you can see we've annexed Meadow Lake in 2020, and then this piece just actually right before Meadow Lake came in. And so they are requesting to come into the city limits, but they have not specified a zoning, and by code, when you do not specify zoning, it defaults to R1A, and a cemetery use is permissible there. So we're recommending approval of the annexation into the city as R1A single-family residential.
Questions or comments by board?
If not, I'll make a motion.
First, I have to ask the audience if anybody would like to speak on this. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come up and speak? If not,
Ghosts? No.
now you got a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Item number 5, file number 220903, special use permit, storage facilities at 533 and 544 East 5th Street. Sal?
Yes, so as some of you or most of you are probably aware, I think it was back in 2018 probably, we made an amendment to the code to require storage unit facilities to have a special use permit requirement in all commercial districts. For some reason, I think at the time it was only allowed in industrial districts with a special use permit, and obviously that is a use that you commonly find along the highway or a commercial corridor, but given its nature and architectural style of typical storage units, we agreed that it should be a special use permit for review. In this case, and we didn't specify whether it was indoor or outdoor, it just defined as storage unit. Self-storage facilities. In this case, the applicant, and I've put in the staff report and in there, they got a couple phase approach, but only 2 of them involve self-storage. They're not the typical self-storage units you'd see where you put the long, narrow buildings in a parking lot with drive-up access. They would be internal climate-controlled facilities that people can have access to and have their own little unit inside. But by code, that's still considered self-storage and needs to have a special use permit. So this specific property, you can see on 5th Street, just behind Sonic, there's a strip mall there. It is zoned C2 overlay, which allows for commercial uses, but the overlay in that area allows for single and 2-family uses as well. As for the site plan, there's a couple phases going on here, but the immediate phase, you can see, has this Phase 1 proposed ice house. I have it in here, but to be honest, tonight we're really just reviewing the special use permit for the storage facilities. They could get a building permit for the ice distribution center, almost like large vending machine tomorrow, and just have that approved by staff. But I have that in here. You can see an example of the one in St. Clair that they're wishing to do on this portion of the property. Phase 2 does have 6 EV chargers along that same side of the parking lot. And then Phase 3 has an internal renovation of the self-storage units inside there. So again, no new construction. And then long-term, Phase 4, they do have a 10,000 square foot construction. At that point, they would have to come in with a site plan and building permits to make sure it meets, all site requirements and everything. But as for the use, and I have in the staff report, for special uses, they have the 10 categories that you have to meet. And really, there's no reason to believe this will have a detriment on the area or the neighborhood and change the use of it. A lot of it's really done interior, and it doesn't change the fire access or parking requirements for the building. Actually, with the removal of those retail capabilities on that farther unit, their parking demand goes down. So staff recommends approval of the special use permit for the use, and then also the site plan for long-term of constructing additional square footage in the future.
Questions, comments?
Yes, I do have some.
Okay.
First of all, Sal, the proposed 8,000 square foot area, that is vacant right now.
Yeah,
There is
there's no building
buildings
there.
or anything there.
Car wash was.
It's where the old car wash was. And if you look at the aerial, you can see that.
Oh, you're correct.
That's what
Yes.
caught my eye right away, because we had a gas leak there here a couple weeks ago where a tractor-trailer truck drove over the gas pipe coming out of the ground and had a significant leak there for about 3 hours. So,
All right, I saw the existing here on the site plan and saw,
so that is my first concern, because that's going to have to be a new building.
Right.
okay, I just saw the existing here and assumed that was that last
No.
space.
No,
Okay.
It's not existing. So my concern there is, what's it going to look like a little bit? Give us some information
Is
about
the
it.
applicant here?
I believe so. Steve, there is Steve.
So that's the first thing. The next one, even though I know you said the proposed ice house isn't really covered under this, so I went and looked at the site, and based on the drawing where the ice house is going to set, and now seeing these pictures, I'm really concerned about the site distances on 5th Street.
So this is a general site plan. They have to get a building permit for the actual ice house, where it'll go to site plan, engineering will review site distance, setbacks, location, and all of that.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, it won't be able to fit that close directly to,
No,
There.
there's
Yeah.
no way, because you won't be able to see it
would-
on the 5th Street.
most likely be in a parking stall, but yeah, we will review site distance and all that at
Okay,
that
do
point.
you also then look at the pedestrian traffic and drive-in traffic that comes in off of 5th Street, if it's going to be, if somebody's going to stop and buy ice and they stop in front of the ice?
So if it's considered drive-through, then you have to have 5-car stack, which we review anyway. If it's somewhere they park and pull up to it, themselves, and they can use the existing parking.
Okay, but what if they would stop in that drive lane? I guess that's my question, where it comes off of Fifth Street, and if that's where.
Well,
the
and
ice
that's
house
reviewed
is,
during our site plan process.
Okay.
Yeah, not in this process. Yeah.
And then you'll look at parking spaces?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So parking is determined by the proposed use itself for the entire square footage. So we take the square footage of all the existing units there and then calculate that square footage before they get occupancy.
Okay, so we are actually only approving, I just want to make sure we're clear on this, only approving the 8,000 square foot self-storage unit that's going next to the existing buildings.
And the potential for the future construction as well. It's for the use on the property as self-storage.
Because then I've got some concerns about that 10,000 square foot proposed in Phase 4. I think that should be separated because unless, again, if the building department's going to look at that for setback, landscaping,
Correct.
you know, all that, we don't have any idea what it's going to look like.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, that's all stuff that we would review internally. This is really for the use itself, to say, is that an appropriate use on that area?
Okay?
And so again, you would review parking for the entire, the addition of the 8,000 square feet, the 10,000 square feet, the ice and the parking for the EV and everything as,
Correct. Anytime there's an occupancy change, they have to tell us the use, and we calculate the square footage, what the use is, do you need to add parking, that kind of thing.
so as they each go through each phase, it'll recalculate and stuff? or
Yeah,
you go-
anytime you come in with a new occupant, so anytime there's a turnover in there, they come in, they tell the use, and if it's, a more intensive use that requires more parking, we let them know that prior to occupancy being issued.
I guess what I have heartburn about is number 7, 8, 9, and 10 in the list of items that get reviewed for a special use permit. Whether general appearance of the neighborhood will be adversely affected by the location of the proposed use on the property. We have no idea because we don't know what it's going to look like. The impact of night lighting in terms of intensity, we have no idea because we have no details. The impact of landscaping for proposed use, we have no idea because we have no details. And this amount of hard surface, sidewalks, parking areas, stuff like that. Water runoff, we have no idea because we have no details.
Yeah, and the applicant is here to answer those questions.
That's my concern with approving this, a blanket approval for the entire site as opposed to
For multiple
breaking that
phases.
out individually in phases.
Yep. And you could do, requested for phases 1, 2 through 3, and then,
Right, because
You
it's
know,
not a
just-
zoning change, I understand
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
it's a special use permit, and it's two separate uses.
Yeah, because your next line is, the site plan proposes the following phases, and then reverting existing 8,000 square foot facility, which is not an existing facility.
you're correct. And when I looked at the site plan, saw existing, I assumed it was a renovation.
That's all my questions.
Right.
When you figure parking, do you deduct for where he's got those U-Hauls that are taking up parking spaces up there? I know that varies with how many he may have and how many
Correct.
he may have out.
Yeah, because
but
that's an existing
taken up.
use, but yeah, if they're not open to the public, whenever they put that in there. I will tell you that site is overparked now because that was built with our old code. We require less parking than we used to. But yeah, if they were to come in with a new use, we would calculate that and say, okay, you actually mark out where your parking's at, and
So in other words, Sal, we may have a chance to change the special use that they want to make it to be, right? When that plan comes to you guys and we look at it, we can't make any changes,
No.
can we?
not if you approve the use as
Special
presented.
use now, okay. Yeah.
I would be very hesitant to approve it as an overall one-time special use permit for the entire facility, based on the lack of information that we have.
Any other questions, comments by board? Otherwise, we'll get the applicant up, if he would, please. You want to come up and speak, please? Introduce yourself.
Steve Landing. I own the property at 537, 533, all that.
John, you want to ask him your questions?
Yeah, Steve, you heard me ask those questions.
Right.
Can you provide any of that feedback and information of what I was asking?
Well, like on that there on the end is would be a future, okay? So basically, we got somewhere mixed up in there, but the first part of it on the left-hand side, the west side, is where we would like to install the units, the Ameren UE charging stations. So we're working with Ameren UE. You know, they have to approve site and all that other stuff. So there's a whole lot of stuff, but it has to go through you guys first.
Excuse me, sir, can you speak into the mic?
Pardon?
You can pull it to you, too.
Oh, okay. I can hear me, but, you know, okay. Sorry about that. So we've been in contact with Ameren UE, going through all their steps and phases of what they will do. You know, this is the first step of going through that, the special use permit. The other one is that if you see the picture on the right, there's the ice machine like that, takes up one car space. That one particular one is in St. Clair. They have another one in Sullivan, one in Pacific is going to, they're, I think, working after the first of the year to put that one in. It's self-contained. You know, I mean, there's not a whole lot to do said about that, other than that. It is self-contained and everything, you know, does ice and water and they're pretty cool systems if you hadn't looked at them. But down the road is we are looking at, you know, do the self-contained storage, because basically indoors, because I really don't want any of the outside stuff. You know, it will fit in with our security systems that we already have in place. It controls the time of when they can go in, controls the time of when they come out that way, because I don't want a bunch of junk in my storage facilities like I know other guys have had in the past, so. Anything else? I mean.
So the storage facility you're proposing on the east end of those 3 buildings?
Right. If one of my tenants would drop out of on that first one, you know, I'd like to go ahead and put that in there. But the goal is to go ahead and where the old car wash was, there's probably about room for 8,000 square foot of a building.
So you would be building a building?
We'd have to build a building, yes, for that.
Okay. And what would that building look like? And
Well, you know, you guys, I think, can kind of control what we have to match with what we have, I think, and that's how that works. But, you know, we're just anticipating long-term down the road is what I'm trying to do.
so the 8,000 square foot building wouldn't be your first phase?
No, that was the.
That's
No, it's the
third
last.
phase?
Those are in the last thing.
Those are in the
The
last.
first one, too, is the EV chargers and the ice machine. That's
Okay.
1 and 2. Like I said, is everything still has to go through you guys as far as what kind of building, what you're going to require me to make it out of, if is it block like my old building or.
So herein lies a problem I have with that, is if we give a blanket special use permit to develop the entire site, you won't come back to us.
Well,
So,
Just with the plans.
I have to.
no, they won't.
It'd be done in-house,
It'd be
not
done
to planning and
in-house.
zoning.
Oh,
Right, you wouldn't come back to planning.
that's, you know, I don't know that old
So-
stuff.
So would you be opposed if we split out the special use permit and we just approve tonight or discuss?
That's fine,
tonight?
yeah. I mean, I just,
1 and 2?
yeah.
And then whenever you get ready to do the buildings where the car wash was and the other one to the
Right, yeah.
west?
No,
come back
I'm
to
good
us?
with that.
Okay.
I just trying to get the Ameren UE thing lined out and get started, and so, you know, whether that goes big or not, but, you know, but yeah, no, I'm fine with just the 1 and 2 and work later on the 3 and 4.
So Sal, could we work that and make that, or does that have to be
Well, 1 and 2 don't have anything to do with the special use permit. You can just get building permits for that
That's why I'm asking.
today, and then whenever we get actual building plans, that could be used as a special use permit application.
So really, he wouldn't need to come to us for a special use permit for the ice house and the electrical charging stations.
Correct. Yeah, just for the self-storage use itself.
Okay.
If we deny then the special use. If we deny the special use, he can't come back for 6 months?
That's correct. Any application has to wait 6 months after denial.
Is that a problem?
To wait 6 months for the 1 and 2?
No, 3 and 4.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. I'm
Yeah.
not that quick on it anyway, but,
What we're saying is you could do 1 and 2 now without the special use that you're applying for.
We don't have to deny it. You could just,
Okay.
Just withdraw it.
It'd be best if he just
Withdraw.
Through it.
withdrew his application today and then came back when he's ready to do phases 3 and 4 with his special use application.
Okay.
so,
Build the ice house today, you can build the EV stations
Okay, well, there we go. Problem solved.
Yeah.
Will you realize what we're looking for if you come back in 6 or 8 months? Realize that we're looking for, what's it gonna look like?
Sure,
Looking at
no
pieces
problem.
of the neighborhood.
I don't even know what it looks like yet.
Okay.
You know,
That would
I
help
mean-
us. That would help us make a decision as to whether.
Well, it depends on construction material and, I mean, who knows how that goes
Right,
anymore.
right, yeah.
But no, like I said, we're trying to utilize the property that we do have. And, with the growth of downtown here, the temperature-controlled storage units is a win-win for everybody.
I think it's great you're having the EV. I know people who are looking, they have it at their house, but you have people come from out of town, and then it's on their little app so they know we're here.
Right.
I think that's great.
So, well, I mean, they are offering great incentives, Ameren is, and state of Missouri as well. Once again, we have the property, we're looking for other revenue streams that we can utilize the property with that can benefit the city. I mean, this is kind of funny, but I even thought about the little green machines you guys got running around. People could drop their green machines off there or pick them up there and drop their car off to charge up. So there's a lot of benefits both ways.
All right, any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6, file number 222904, preliminary plat of Washington Victorian Manor. Sal? Did I have the wrong one? No, that's in here, yeah.
No, you're right.
That's right.
Right?
Thought so.
All right.
Looking for some.
So I'm sure, as everyone is aware, the city has been, over the past 6-8 months or so, working on our connection here that's set in our comp plan to connect Rabbit Trail to Earth Crest. And as part of that, there's a little bit of right-of-way that needs to be brought through. What you see highlighted, this is Victorian Manor, now AmeriCare. They own this piece here, and we have set to acquire the right-of-way to put that bridge through. But before we can do that, we have to close on the land and create a lot. So you can see here, this lot 1, right around the bend, is set to be broken off in a preliminary plat and then final plat so that we can actually acquire that piece and turn it into right-of-way. So that's what we're doing here tonight.
Questions or comments by board?
And we have had this reviewed by our engineer designing the bridge to make sure it's enough right-of-way width and everything, so.
Anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this? If not, entertain a motion by board.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Moving on to item number 7, file number 220905, preliminary plat, Stonecrest, plat 17.
This must be why Sean's here.
Sal?
All right. Your next item tonight is a preliminary plat for a single-family, the next phase of single-family development at Stonecrest. You can see here, I have both those parcels highlighted because it does kind of stretch beyond there, but it's to add single-family lots along North Crest Drive here. You can see it's all zoned R1A, single-family residential, again with that 10,000 square foot lot minimum. And then here are the lots that's start here on the south side of North Crest Drive and go up towards the intersection. And then we have this lot here, which is a little bit more than 2 residential lots put together. The reason it's larger is that is the proposed location of the next firehouse. And our fire chief has reviewed that size and requested that size actually to make sure that it could fit. And so the platting process, it has all the correct easements shown. There is existing water, sewer, and access to this, so there is no need for a performance bond. They can actually move forward with the final plat, or the preliminary plat and final plat next week if approved here tonight. The only comment we had here was that this Fox Crest be changed to Earth Crest to be uniform as we go all the way across. But that was our only comment.
Thank you. That makes it much less confusing.
On the periphery.
Any comments, questions by board? Anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Moving on to item number 8, file number 220907, special use permit, 2132 Highway A, temporary shelter. Sal?
All right. So I'm going to start here with just a little bit of background because this is the first time we've had a request for this since we've changed our code in 2019. So in 2019, we had a request to place a homeless shelter on a commercial property up on Highway 47, actually where the dispensary is now. At that time, we did not have really a definition in our city code for that specific use. To be honest, the best way to even put it into use at the time was if someone wanted to do a hotel and make it free, how could we define that separately? And at any point, it's not good to have any proposed use not specifically defined in your code. You want to have any use in the city limits defined so we know what it is. And so at that time, city council with city staff and our city attorney looked at potential uses and definitions, and the city passed a new ordinance pertaining to homeless shelters, and we actually have it as a newly defined use. And so that is taken. We found that use from they call it the NAICS code, the North America Institute classification system, and so our industry classification system. And so that is a definition that we didn't write, that we found through a standard system that all cities use, actually all businesses use for their tax IDs in all of North America. But the definition is for a temporary shelter is a short-term emergency shelter for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, or child abuse, and/or temporary residential shelter for homeless individuals or families, runaway youth, and patients and families caught in medical crisis. These establishments may operate their own shelters or may subsidize housing using existing homes, apartments, hotels, or motels. So that's the definition that was actually created back in 2019. And then after that was determined up to city council on where to allow those. And so what was passed was that they must be located in either M1 or M2 light or heavy industrial areas, and they must require a special use permit. And so this specific request is for a special use permit for a temporary shelter on this property here at the corner of Chamber Drive and Highway A. You can see here it's the old level 9. It was a heating and cooling place. It is zoned M2 heavy industrial as well as the surrounding properties. I do want to highlight that this piece here we just rezoned 2 months ago. I do not have the map updated yet, but there is, that's part of the other self-storage unit. And those houses, one of them has been torn down, the other one will be torn down. So that is all industrial to the south as well. So I wanted to just highlight this portion of our code. So section 400.205 does talk about, kind of the intent of allowing or reviewing special uses. So per our code, this is not just for temporary shelters, any special use. Special uses are those types of uses which tend to be problematic because they, one, have a tendency to generate significant traffic volumes and or turning movements. Two, have operational characteristics that may be have a detrimental impact on adjacent or nearby properties. Or three, have other characteristics which may or may impact public health, safety, or welfare, but can be approved if such uses meet the criteria established herein. So special uses can also include public and quasi-public uses affected with a public interest. In order to ensure that detrimental impacts are avoided or mitigated to a satisfactory level, special uses must be reviewed and may be approved in accordance with the provisions of this article. So I wanted to kind of point that out up front of what the process is of reviewing a special use. So they are uses that are assumed to have problematic in an area that maybe need to have extra review and they have extra criteria be met because of that. So the whole point of a special use is that you can conditionalize them to lessen their detriment to the surrounding properties. So in our code, and we talked about it on the last special use, there are 10 criterion that need to be met in order to approve a special use or deny a special use, and then use that criteria to then add conditions of approval. So I'm going to kind of go through here like I did in my staff report. The first 6 here, the compatibility of the proposal in terms of both of use and appearance with the surrounding neighborhood. Well, the surrounding neighborhood is industrial in nature. They are not proposing to construct anything on the site, and there's not a proposed change in appearance. So by staff's review, it meets that criteria. The comparative size, floor area, and mass of the proposed structure in relationship to adjacent structures and buildings and the surrounding properties in the neighborhood. Again, they're not asking to build anything. They're using the existing structure, and so that there's no change in use there, that there's no proposed structure that changes the relationship to the surrounding area. The frequency and duration of various and indoor-outdoor activities and special events, and the impact of these activities in the surrounding area. The application doesn't show any, potential indoor or outdoor activities. There's nothing proposed outdoor or any special events that we have reason to believe that will impact that area and that criteria. The capacity of adjacent streets to handle the increased traffic in terms of traffic volume, including hourly and daily levels. Now on this one, in looking at the application, there's no reason to believe that the trips per day will be any higher than you'd see in any industrial use in the industrial park. With that being said, we have taken to effect that the clientele may possibly have to walk to that area. There's no pedestrian facilities on Highway A or on Chamber Drive. But I also will point out that that is difficult to meet when we require them to be in an industrial area where we don't typically have pedestrian facilities. The added noise level created by activities associated with proposed use, again, we think it meets this criteria because there's no potential added noise level. And then the requirements for public services where the demands of the proposed use are in excess of the individual demands of the adjacent land uses in terms of police and fire protection. So there's no reason to believe that there's any additional fire hazards created by the proposed use. As for the police protection, I did want to reach out to the police chief prior to. We did ask before we wrote the staff report, and they don't have reason to believe that they can't accommodate the proposed use as well. So we think it meets that criteria. Number 7, where the general appearance of the neighborhood will be adversely affected by the location of the proposed use on the parcel. We're not proposing to change anything on the parcel, again, by the appearance of it. Number 8, the impact of night lighting in terms of intensity, duration, and frequency of use. Again, no proposed change in lighting. The impact of landscaping on the proposed use in terms of maintained landscaping areas versus areas to remain in a natural state, as well as openness of the landscape versus the use of buffers and screens. And no proposed changes there. It doesn't have any residential directly adjacent requiring any new screening. And then the impact of a significant amount of hard surface areas for buildings, sidewalks, drives, parking areas, and service areas in terms of noise transfer, water runoff, and heat generation. So again, with no proposed changes to the building, no new construction, there's no reason to believe that they can't meet that criteria. So with this in mind and reviewing all this criteria, staff has reason to believe that it meets the criteria. We do recommend approval. Now, I will say we have not added any conditions of approval onto that like we typically would do on a special use permit, and that's because staff felt without hearing testimony and hearing from the applicant or the public hearing, we don't necessarily have the capability of adding the appropriate conditions of approval at this time. So just because our recommendation doesn't have any conditions of approval doesn't mean we don't necessarily think that there shouldn't be. When it comes to number of people that can be there with occupancy, access to it, there are a number of things that could come with conditions of approval. But given what the code says for approving a special use and these 10 criterion, that is our review of this at this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sal?
I really only have one question. You probably can't answer it, so I'll wait until the client comes up and talks about it. But it deals with, you mentioned there's really no impact for the fire service, but there is a life hazard issue there that I'm definitely concerned about. And I'm sure the client can answer those questions whenever we get to that point.
And you basically are saying there's minimal outdoor, on the original one back when it was the doctor's building there by the bridge and stuff, they had an outdoor area that was fenced off and everything else like that because everybody's not going to stay inside 100% of the time.
Yeah, the application doesn't show anything that has any outdoor activities, but if they can bring any new information, then that would obviously come into effect with needing screening and that sort of thing.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Sal, based on the size of that building, I guess there'll be a limit on the amount of people that can stay there.
So any type of
Parking.
occupancy, whether it's single-family, multifamily, it is based on square footage. So in a sleeping room, you can only have so many people granted occupancy based on square footage. So until our building inspector can get in there, there's not necessarily a max that we can do on there, but that would be the same for any home.
There's no idea of what it may hold then, at this time, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other detrimental things or liabilities coming to the city of Washington? Is this,
I mean, I don't know if that's something I can answer at this time, that,
I mean,
yeah.
the city of Washington won't need any liability policy of insurance or anything for this, will they? No. Because it's all taken care of by, right, okay. So you can't think of anything then, Mark?
No.
Okay, great.
Any other questions, comments by board? If not, I assume everybody's here for this and not the prior ones. We'd like to hear from everybody. If you would come up, say your name and your address, and keep the questions for the board. We'll get the answers for you. We don't want you turning around talking to the audience and everything. So anybody that would want to come up, applicant first?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bob Zick. I represent the applicant. The applicant actually consists of three parties: Forest Hills Properties, LLC, which is the owner of the real estate, Washington Charitable Foundation, which is the applicant and lessee from the landlord, and Life's River, which is another not-for-profit that will actually operate the homeless center. I'm going to, for my comments tonight, refer to all three collectively as the applicant. I was going to go into the history. It looks like Sal covered that, but just briefly, if you'll recall, when we proposed this last time, the city asked that these sorts of facilities be placed in residential, or excuse me, in industrial districts. Basically, what we went out and did was purchased a piece of property that was zoned industrial so that we could meet your requirements and mandate. So that's why we're here. That's why we're using this piece of property. That's why, as Sal said, even though there are some minor pedestrian access issues, this probably is more accessible than any other, excuse me, resident or commercial industrial property in the city. A couple things I'd like to stress about this intended use. First of all, this is not intended as a warming center or a homeless center that you might traditionally think of. Folks are going to be coming to us primarily by referral, say from a school, a church, a police officer. There will be no homeless center signs out in front. It's simply going to have a sign that says Life's River, in part because we want to respect the privacy of the people that are going to be staying with us. Those folks don't want to advertise the fact that it's a homeless center, and neither do we. Secondly, the applicant does not intend to run a homeless center for the chronically homeless or the severely mentally ill. And I think that is a huge distinction between this and a lot of homeless centers that you read about in the horror stories in the papers. We know that we will not be equipped with psychologists and those sorts of people to deal with the severely mentally ill, and so we're just not going to go there. Our goal is to help the temporarily displaced versus the chronically homeless. We would actually prefer to call this a transitional center, but your zoning code uses the phrase homeless center, so we acceded to that, and that's what we're using. But I hope that by the time we're done speaking tonight and hearing from the folks in the audience, that you'll realize that this is not a typical homeless center like you read about in some of the papers. It's going to be a resource for the short-term homeless and displaced. There'll be time limits on the time people can stay in the facility. Residents will be required to come up with a detailed, specific housing plan that includes securing a steady income and searching for safe, decent housing that meets their needs. There will be a code of conduct for all residents. They'll be required to have good behavior and personal hygiene. There will be showers and laundry facilities located in the facility. Financial literacy, life skills, and good tenant skills are the sorts of things that we're going to promote and educate tenants on. We want to help people out on to keep them from entering into a multi-generational poverty and homelessness path. In short, we don't want to just give people money and a place to stay overnight. We want to help them learn how to become productive members of society on their own. We will follow up with folks after they've checked out of the facility and offer to be a continuing resource for them if they run into trouble again. Need trouble finding a job, you need trouble helping find transportation, call us. We're going to be there to help these folks as they continue. We're not just going to abandon them once they finally attain success and check out. Weapons, alcohol, illegal drugs, and paraphernalia will not be allowed on the property, and we will conduct drug testing. Again, we're not here to serve the chronically homeless and the people that are just not wanting to participate in any rules. Quiet hours at the facility will start at 9 p.m. Any person that does not meet these rules will be firmly asked to leave the facility. And if they don't leave voluntarily, we will call the police department and have them help us. Anybody that's not working actively to improve their situation will be asked to leave the facility. If they're not working towards that job or that arranging residence or that sort of thing on their own, we're not going to just keep them forever. We intend to be good neighbors and run the facility like it were in our backyard. I know there are concerns that we think, some people have voiced concerns that they're going to bus loads of people out here and we're going to be stuck with all kinds of folks that our community can't handle. We have discussed that in detail. If they send a bus full of folks out here that don't meet our criteria, we're going to offer them bus tickets back. We're just not going to let them check in. So I think we will kill that trend real quick when the first bus arrives, if it does arrive. Hopefully, people will get the message up front, what we're going to tolerate and what we're not going to tolerate, and I don't think it's even going to happen. We're going to have competent professional people running the facility, and they're not going to allow deviation from the rules I've articulated. We believe we've met with close to all, if not all, of the neighbors, and some neighbors that aren't real close. And in checking with Sal several times, and including here again tonight, I don't think there are any people within the 185-foot range that have objected to this. We see the typical resident taking advantage of this facility as being a young mother or father with 2 kids that is temporarily down on their luck, and they need some place to kind of help them get a start again. It's pretty hard to save for a rent down payment and a first month's rent and a damage deposit if every dollar that you earn is going towards survival. And so we want to give people a break, help them get by, help them have a place to stay for a month or 2, and then get out and get on their own with their own job. We would like to meet with city officials twice a year to review the progress and make sure that there aren't additional suggestions or different things you'd like to see us improve upon. Washington is our town as well. Everybody on the boards that it represents these not-for-profit corporations is very much a member of the community. We do not want to create a problem in our backyard. We're going to run this thing well. It's going to be well run. Again, this is not going to be a campground or a parking spot for the chronically homeless. We think this is good land use. We think the staff recognizes that. And we would appreciate the planning and zoning recommendation to the council that the special use permit be approved. Are there any questions?
Yeah, back to what I was asking Sal about. You know, when you originally proposed the one over there by the bridge and stuff like that, there was going to be a fence around areas and stuff like that, you know. And I'm assuming by what your intended use and stuff too, that you would probably have some type of privacy fence and stuff too, if you're still wanting to protect those people from gawkers and anybody else that's a family member that may want to, you know, find out location and
Right. We are not
harm them
opposed.
or.
We are not opposed to a privacy fence. You can trust us, and go with the, we'll build it if it seems appropriate, or if you want to make it a condition of the conditional use permit or special use permit, we're okay with that. We don't know exactly how to build it at this moment or how to articulate exactly where it should be, but we're not opposed to putting a fence for an outside lounge area. Again, just like you suggested, we don't, we want to protect the privacy of the people that are there as well. This is a little different than up at the former Brunworth building, insofar as we don't really have residences in the immediate vicinity. So I'm not sure how crucial that is, but if the city would like that and make a condition, we're open to that as a reasonable condition.
Bob, I had a bunch of questions, but it sounds like you just answered them. Sounds like this is very well thought out.
Thank you.
I have a couple, and I'm not sure you can, it's more technical. Do you know about how many number of clients you're proposing?
We are thinking in the range of 25. I don't have an official opinion from the building inspector yet, but we were estimating that. I think there's about, hang on a second, 3,600 square feet there.
Okay. And will you have clients first level and lower level? Because there's a basement there too.
I think so. Again, as long as it's permissible under the occupancy code. We don't want to put people in rooms that you say, that the
Right.
building commissioner says you can't put them in. And so if
Sal,
there's
that's
space
in-
in the basement that's not usable, or in the lower level that's not usable, we would make that lounge areas or something.
Just wait a second. You want to come on up and introduce yourself?
I'm Greg Holbrook. And the answer to the question about the basement, the originally plan is not to. However, I've looked at the basement. If we want to do the basement, I'm going to have to cut some doors and windows and some concrete, which I'm prepared to do if that's necessary.
Okay.
But we will meet the ingress and egress as required for any living space, which I don't know, it's a so-by-so window to get in and out of. So if anybody goes in the basement, that will be met. My guess is the basement will become restrooms and showers.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sal, but the building department would review the building whenever will they go through the permit process?
Correct. yeah.
Okay.
They'd have to do inspection, since it's any life safety overnight stay.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Full inspection.
Very good.
What do you anticipate the age of the clients to be? Like over 18 that you have to? they're-
Know the answer to that question.
Not that it really matters to this permit, but
I am Annie Fine-Cannon. I'm one of the board members of Life's River. So we're planning on starting with families. So therefore, you would have an adult of age and minor children. So that could look like that could really be a mix of anything. That could be a 19, 20, 21-year-old. It could be somebody in their 40s with minor children.
do you have any idea the need in the community? Is there any survey?
So there is not a great way to count,
Right.
but I did do a lot of homework. And I can tell you that we did, the homeless task force has a homeless hotline. And in a 6-month period, they had 112 family units access that line, and 42 of those were from Washington. It's for all of Franklin County, but nearly half of them are not, at least a third or more were from Washington.
All right, thanks. Any other questions, comments?
Does Life Touch have any, is it Life River, I'm
Life's
sorry,
River.
Life's River? Do they have any experience in doing this in other communities?
So no, Life's River is a brand-new organization that is started out of Washington and with Washington community members that were heading it up. Members of the board there's members of the board that have had experience working with the homeless population, including myself and Lindsay Jasper, who is also on the board, who works with the homeless population.
And what do you think the average stay of a client would be?
So that will be very dependent, like has been said, that 30 days is like the average stay of a client depending on the situation. I will give you a quick example. I have had in the last probably 6 months of being a volunteer that answers the homeless task force line, I have had 3 women who have given birth to children who had no place to go. And so we had to scramble around and scrape money together to keep them in a hotel until their apartments became available or wherever place became available. There's one right now that's waiting on a trailer to get some improvements. And it's just that they needed it for 15 days. So it could be as little as that.
What do you think on the upper end? I mean, I think Bob said a month or two.
Month or two.
Are you going to put an ending time on it, or if as long as they're working toward their plan, are you going to allow them to stay?
As long as they are working towards their plan and goal, depending, because some of the folks will be coming with, they have, no driver's license or IDs, and so we have to start very basic before they can ever even go apply for a job. So those things take time. So as long as they are working hard and working towards their goals, then they will be welcome to stay.
And right now, you're telling me it's only for family, someone of age, and possibly their children, or a couple and their children.
That is the group we are going to begin with because, you want to start small, get some successes, and then grow from there.
Is the idea then to deal with the issue that I think is becoming more and more prevalent is the high school age kids that's couch hopping, that doesn't have a stable home environment and ends up staying at somebody's home until they get, you need to move on, and then he goes to another one and moves on. Could this potentially be a resource? I mean, you've got the school district building right across the street. One of the referrals you talked about was a church or a school. I see this as a potential to help that age group kids with the resources you have, hopefully, within the schools within this community.
That is something that I would have to talk to the entire board about. I can tell you, as my other role in life as the executive director of the Franklin County Community Resource Board, we're actually working with Hope Ranch to work on that population.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I got a question for Bob, real quick. Bob, you made a statement a while ago about drug testing. Now, I met with two of the applicants on Thursday evening, and I asked that question. I asked, are you going to do drug testing? And at that time, they said no. So has that changed?
Yes, we
since
had a
Thursday?
discussion about that today.
Okay.
And we talked about the pluses and minuses, and we think the community will be best served if we do drug testing.
Sounds
So
great.
that was a change today.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Do you feel as though those we see in town now are the ones that you're going to look to help? Or are those, it's kind of been said to me that as though this does not meet those people we see on the street or in the parks. What's your answer to that? Is that, will we see a decline in the homeless currently in Washington, or is this something different?
I must be totally honest with you. I personally don't see it that much. And I don't know if it's because I look past it and I'm not attentive, or maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe I just don't happen to be in the right or wrong place at the right time. I personally don't see it that much. I do know that my experience is not the average experience, and I know that the folks on the board see it a lot and they get inquiries about it a lot. But whether it will, whether this facility as I have described it will apply to the people that you see on the street, I don't know until I find out if they've been willing to come visit with our counselors and our staff, and if they're willing to express an interest in A, being sober and well-behaved so they can even come to our facility, B, expressing a commitment to work toward self-improvement. You know, I can't answer your question because I don't know all those sorts of details. We are going to stick to our mission, and if that mission allows us to serve people that you happen to see walking around, then we will be helping those people. If the people that you see walking around are not willing to abide by our rules, then, you know, we have no illusions that we're going to totally solve the homeless situation. And so I guess that's the best way to answer your question.
So just maybe as a question back to the young lady, but how do individuals contact your organization? Do they use the hotline, or do you stop if you see somebody? As an example, there was a young couple today sitting down at 47 and Studeman Road on the curb there by the filling station for several hours today. Drove by there a couple times. Do you seek them out?
I don't think we're going to
by?
seek them out.
Okay.
If we see them on the street and one of our board members passes by and wants to stop and talk to them, that sure may happen. I won't deny that. I do think, as I said earlier in my comments, I think a lot of this is going to be referral from the police or the school, okay, or the folks that deal with the homeless board for Franklin County. If someone calls the Franklin County Homeless Board and says, hey, there's somebody, a young mother in Washington that just gave birth and needs a place to stay for 2 weeks, would you guys help her? And I'm sure the answer is going to be yes.
So I used to listen to the scanner a lot with the police because I'm in the fire department, but you would hear the police get a phone call that, you know, there's a homeless person at such and such location, and they would go and talk to that person. Are they going to be getting any training to know how to handle that situation, whether or not it's a candidate that could possibly come to you? Or are you just going to have them pick them up and bring them to you, or do you know how that's going to work?
I think the process, frankly, will evolve a little bit, and
Okay.
I think the police department, after hearing the results of this hearing and the council meeting next week, will kind of get the message that if it's a chronically homeless, totally drug-laden person that has no interest in helping themselves, I think they're going to know not to send them to us.
Right. Okay.
And if it's someone that is short-term homeless and has a desire to improve their lot, I think the police department is going to learn that these guys will help them.
Okay, very good.
So I guess adding a little bit on to John, I mean, are they gonna be the ones that'll just kind of ask the question, and you guys go and go through the entire profile to find out what they're capable of?
Yeah, there'll be an interview and a get-to-know-each-other process, and during that process, that's when we're going to find out, at least initially, whether they're willing to abide by those rules. And of course, some folks may not be totally accurate in their initial representations to us, and that's why I said if they're not following the rules, they're going to be asked to leave.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak?
I have one more question.
Okay.
So I guess with doing this in the past, I mean, you have a pretty good percentage of people moving on and improving their life.
Yeah, so, truthfully, there are some that have gone on and were able to improve their lives. Most of them, it's really Karen Dawson is the one that has handheld people and showed them the ropes and showed them the way. But over the course of, it's taken years, because we didn't have any place for them to go and be. So they would, for example, one amazing couple that has really been awesome has lived in a dumpster for the first year that she knew them, and slowly taught them how to save their money and how to keep themselves protected. And they both had jobs. They were walking ungodly amounts. The one was walking to Colton's restaurant, and the man was walking down to the recycling center every day to have an income. And so it took a very long time, and yes, they were able to finally get into a house or an apartment, and now they have a house. But I think that we could have sped up that process and done it in a way more dignified manner if we would have had a place like this.
Well, that's good. I guess if you see that happen to one couple, that's what keeps you in the business. But,
Yeah, it gives you hope.
so there is I guess the percentage doesn't mean anything then, but most people do move on.
The people that want to move on make it work. Yes.
Thank you.
If I could briefly make a comment that might save you a lot of time. We have a lot of folks here who are very passionate about seeing this approved, and they're very willing to come forward and tell you their particular reason for liking to see it approved. But I don't want to waste your time, and so I throw this out just as a question. Do you want to straw poll the board, or do you want to do anything different, or would you like to just go ahead and hear from all our folks? I don't know that all the comments are particularly centered on land use. I think a lot of the comments will be, is this good for Washington? And we definitely believe that it is, but I don't want to waste an hour and a half of your time either.
I don't think it's necessary, but anybody on the board want to have another idea? We may ask later after we hear from more people.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate trying to keep it shorter. Anyone else that would like to speak?
Good evening. My name is
You're gonna
Sean
have to pull
Mayall.
it back down.
My name is Sean Mayall, and I own property located at 23 Town and Country Drive in Washington. That's in the industrial tract near where the temporary homeless shelter is being proposed to be located. One thing that I wanted to do tonight before I read what I have is I wanted to make it very clear for the record that myself, and I know people in the room that oppose this, have absolutely nothing against homeless people. And I have a ton of respect for the applicants team, and what they're trying to do. I think tonight there's a lot of questions that need to be answered and need to be talked about. I'm not sure that tonight is going to be the night that this needs to be voted on. There's a lot of questions. Again, I'm here tonight, and I know probably most of the people here are here tonight very open-minded, and I think that's very important that we're all open-minded and we look at the good, we look at the bad, and we make the proper decision. There is a need for our society to help people who are homeless. For whatever reason persons are homeless, they are still fellow human beings. Some people need and deserve a hand up, food and temporary shelter. Some people need some form of treatment. At the same time, the city cannot turn a blind eye to some of the adverse effects of homelessness. The increase in property damage, littering, loitering, actual and perceived safety concerns, increased costs to the police department, hospital, and many other service organizations. It is also known that there is a correlation between expanding services and more homeless coming into the area. Homelessness is complex, asymmetrical, and not completely solvable. I think we would all agree with that. In an attempt to address this issue, the City of Washington provides that temporary shelters can be placed in M1 and M2 industrial districts, but only with stipulations or special conditionals so as to promote the intent and purposes of the zoning, including promotion of public health, safety, comfort, morals, and welfare of the city and its citizens pursuant to Article 5 of the Zoning Code. In considering the issue, there are some questions which need to be asked. And I know some of these questions have been talked about. Bob did answer a few questions, but I want to reiterate on some questions because they're deep questions that need a really good answer. What should the distance of the temporary shelter be from schools, playgrounds, daycares, and existing residents? I'm not looking for answers right now. I'm just stating the questions. How do patrons get to this location on Highway A without crossing a private property and without risking being struck by an automobile down Highway A? Is there a safe and adequate access by sidewalks, access to public transportation? What is the appropriate number of people who should be allowed at the temporary shelter, and over what time period? How many other people are going to be drawn to Washington, Missouri because it has a homeless shelter? Where are the other persons going to be housed who are going to be drawn to the area and they are denied access to the shelter because it is fully utilized? I realize it's been stated multiple times that that is not the intent of this. However, it is well known that when we have a shelter like this, that the public, other cities, the state, people overlook that, and they do think we have a homeless shelter. It cannot be denied. What are the building code requirements to house the people, including fire protection, commercial sprinklers, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, etc.? Is the operations plan of the temporary shelter adequate? What is the business plan, including income and expense for an operation of a temporary shelter? Is there going to be a log of patrons, including identification, etc., criminal backgrounds, checks, not to expose both patrons and or the surrounding residents, businesses, and citizens to criminals or violent sex offenders? Is there going to be a routine drug test and alcohol? Will illegal drugs be prohibited on the property? Is there going to be a curfew? Will there be security cameras? Is there going to be adequate parking? Will there be an inspection checklist and a schedule with appropriate fees? How many homeless will migrate to Washington, Missouri, or be dropped off in Washington, Missouri because of a temporary shelter? Are we prepared to pay the cost to address the problems which will be caused by the additional homeless who will be dropped off or migrate to Washington? Will the taxpayers have to pay for the improvements, additional public services, including police and fire protection, ambulance, medical services, which will all be necessary? Based upon the applicant's business plan, should these costs and the cost of any necessary infrastructure improvements be borne by the applicant? These are some of the problems which planning and zoning and the city council should consider, but probably not all of them. Section 400.230 of Article 5 makes it the duty of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council to give consideration to the effect of the requested use of health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the residents in the area in the vicinity of the property and the residents of the city generally before the Planning and Zoning Commission or the city council can take any action. Therefore, I suggest that this matter be continued for a reasonable amount of time so that the Planning and Zoning Commission can acquire all the necessary information for it to report to the city council, can acquire all necessary information to proceed with its action upon the application for the benefit of the applicant, the homeless, the nearby residents, and the landowners, and the city of Washington. Just in closing, again, I respect the situation, but the problem that we have to overcome is they will come. And we have to be prepared as a city, as taxpayers, as citizens. How are we going to address the problems? There's no way that those can be stopped. It's happened here before with train rides. It will happen again and again. I don't know the answer, but hopefully we can all make an educated decision. But I think there's just a lot of concerns and a lot of things that need to be discussed and talked about before anybody's ready to make a decision. So that's all that I have.
Any questions by board? Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Eckelkamp. I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Board to hear what I have to say today. Bob Zick and the team did a nice job on the presentation. I appreciate it. That's some of the reasons I'm here, to fact-finding and discuss and discover some of the things here tonight. John, you did a nice job summing it up. I'm not going to reiterate. Many of my notes had the same type of things that he just said. So I'm very concerned. And the reason I am, and I should have qualified that before, I have property across the street at 2083, at the corner of Reether Court and Highway A there. Have an old home that my wife and I owned for, I don't know, several years, 17 years or so. We had a business out of it. There's a rental property, 3-car garage with rental property there also. That's why I'm concerned. So besides what I think Sean, that you said earlier, I'm concerned with how you're going to qualify these people, how you're going to manage it, and who's going to enforce it, how that's going to be done. I mean, that's great and good intentions, and I know you're very capable people to do it, but how is that going to happen? Who's going to be there at the site 24/7 asking those kind of questions and say, no, I'm sorry? And then where does that person go when you say no? Does he go conveniently across the street? There's some woods down there. I got a shed down there. There's some other industrial places there that's close by. It has valuable stuff in their trucks and stuff. Where'd they go for that? So the intentions are good. Also, not just next week, if it's approved next week, next month, next year. I'm there 5 years from now. And we pass this, and some of you may be on the board, some of you may not. I'm not for sure where the rest of, who's going to enforce all this stuff? What's going to happen? do we have derelict cars sitting out there? It's cold out, and do they park there? And those are the things I'm asking and what I'd like to discover and discuss some more. Just a few points. And again, I don't want to reiterate everything he has said. Same thing with the drug test. Hey, this is great. Have a drug test. But if they fail and they're at the doorstep, what happens? And I like to see also, this is the interior of it more than the exterior that I've been concentrating on. The building, have problems with people with remote controls on TV sets or air conditioning, and how is that all going to be defined? And bathrooms and upkeep 2 to 3 years from now. There's a lot of use on that stuff. I don't want a bunch of weeds and a bunch of doors start cracking and the thing start downfalling for the value of my property and the whole community as well. So thank you again. I appreciate it, Bob. Nice job in the team there. Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Curtis Ozzie. I live at 7 Edward Place. I think that the presentation that we looked at was really good because it opened my eyes to what is actually trying to be done, and it's not really what I had in mind whenever I first heard about what was going on. And I think that I just want to start by saying that I think that it's a noble cause and it makes sense, but there are some questions because, as Sal mentioned, right now it's being proposed without any conditions. And I just wanted to throw out some questions that I came up with as I was sitting there listening to the presentation, because I think the way that it was described, it seems really reasonable the way they want to utilize the property. But without any conditions, a year from now, they could totally decide they're going to go with a different model and kind of do whatever they want. So I think whenever we think about the most important things of how it was described, you know, the way they want to use it, I think some of those things should be incorporated into conditions for that permit if you do decide to issue it. I think that, you know, it was mentioned before, but there's a huge need for lights and at least a shoulder on the road or a walkway. That's a huge safety issue. I was driving through there the other day, and I kind of knew that this was coming up, and so it really stuck in my head. There was somebody, even today, there's not a shelter or anything there now, but there was somebody walking down the side of Highway A there, and they could have easily been hit at night because there's no light. They were wearing an orange jacket, fortunately, so I spotted them pretty easily. But if you really increase the traffic there, that just, it just opens up, you know, an opportunity for a tragedy. So I think that should really be heavily considered as to whether or not there has to be some investment that goes along with this if you move forward with it. Some of the things that came to mind is that, you know, there should probably be some sort of definition for what short-term means. So that it says short-term in the definition, but what is short-term? Is it the way we describe it when we talk about short-term rentals with Airbnbs? We have an ordinance on that, or is it something different than that? So just something to think about for clarification. I personally, not that it really has anything to do with whether or not you approve or deny, or maybe it is important to you, but it would be nice if the applicant could maybe put together or share with us some of their experiences of how they've had success in the past, because I know it was mentioned, you know, they were talking about Karen Dawson and she really helped somebody out. And I'm just wondering, so if they're doing that now, how are they getting that done? And it would just be interesting, I think, for me and the rest of the public to know how they're doing the work they're doing now and how they're seeing success, because it probably helps their cause for, you know, for changing minds for people who are against it. And I think that would help everybody make a better decision of whether or not they think that makes sense in this area. Kind of going back to, I think that there should be, you know, some stipulations that go with this. So if you do approve it, there should be some stipulations that go with it. So what happens if a year from now, all of the things that they said that they're going to do, which make it sound very reasonable, what happens if they're found to not be complying with all the promises that are being made tonight? And I think it was mentioned before, how is that enforced? So I think that would be something important to determine, you know. And then what happens if they're not in compliance? How do you get them in compliance? What happens? Another question is there an opportunity for expansion? So it'd be really nice to know if there's going to be an occupancy limit on that building the way it is today when you issue the permit. And then also if there's an opportunity for expansion, because it looks like there's enough ground there. You could probably put up a second structure. I don't know, the zoning and the setbacks and exactly what you could do, but it looks like it could be possible. So I think it would be wise to consider that before a decision's made, and probably wise for them to think about if that's what they want to do and incorporate that into their plan. A question that was mentioned before, but I think it's important, is that facility going to be staffed all the time? And I think too, they talked about having, single mothers and young kids there. And so what kind of safety precautions are there going to be to make sure that predators aren't taking advantage of people? Because it's sad that we live in a world where we have to worry about that, but we have to worry about it, and we don't want to create a place where that's a target. Another question is, how is the facility going to be funded? And just, is there any way that would end up becoming the city's problem if there would be problems funding it in the future? I don't know if there's any way that happens, like if there's no funding, you just close down and it's no big deal. But I think it's important for taxpayers to know if they're going to have any liabilities if it does get approved. I think those are all the questions I had, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good things.
No way.
That's great.
Okay, move on.
Hi, I'm Barb Wallach. What else do you need? Address 27 Amel Court. My big thing with this, first of all, as everyone said, I think too, very noble cause. I think it sounds, certainly there's a need for something like this. My sisters and I own the property directly across the highway. No one ever talked to us about this until about 5 minutes before the meeting began. So with that, all we had to go on is what was in the newspaper, which said a homeless shelter. That conjures up all kinds of ideas. I think a lot of this is probably well thought out, but I think before you put something out there, maybe if you have visited places like this, perhaps if you had those people come and we had a little general meeting just to show this is how it's been successful. It's a great concern of ours, of course, having the property there. We go back to the tree line, what that all could mean. Our big thing in talking with my sisters was safety. If there's going to be children there, where are they going to play afterwards? Is there going to be a bus stop there? Is that going to work on Highway A? There are no shoulders, let alone a walkway. I think that's a major thing to really consider if this is the best use of that space. Again, I think it is a noble cause. I hear a lot of this is proposed and this is proposed, and that's not in the proposal. So, for instance, no proposed events, et cetera. So after 2 years of the funding and they need to do a fundraiser, can they just go ahead and do it? Because it's not proposed tonight, but could there be something there at that time? Okay, well, what kind of safety does that bring into the draw as well? I really hope that you guys really take a long, hard look at this. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I personally found out more information tonight than we had been given the month prior, so I appreciate that, but I'd still like a little bit more information. So, thank you.
Barb. Anyone else?
She's really nice. Yes, I think so. She has a special needs.
Hi, guys. My name's Craig Miller, 1800 Anniston. I'm with Emo's Pizza. I'm with Sugar Fire Smokehouse. I'm with the Chamber Board. I've served on the hospital board. I've been watching kind of this issue for a long time. Homeless it's a big to-do. What I've found in my research and in looking at this is that there's a need for it. It's costing the city already. Police officers. I've called them to my places of businesses, not once, not twice, not 5, 10 times, with people that are by my dumpster, with people that are out back of the store, with people that are harassing my employees, people that are inside. I've had issues not with those folks that I have to call the police about. I've had employees that I know that are in significant need, that are, hey, I don't know where I'm gonna go. I have to couch surf. I'll be at work tomorrow. I might not be there tomorrow. I don't know what I'm gonna do. The city is already spending money on these folks. They're already spending money on this problem. Let's not get past what the issue tonight is, which is, hey, we're looking for a place for this to go. The applicants have asked for this one time, I believe, and the city said, hey, let's think about this, and let's think about where we want to put this. The city thought about it. The applicants have now come back and said, hey, you said it should go in this type of place. Here it is. This is what we'd like to do with this. We still have the same goal in our heart to help the people, to help the city, to help the police department, to help the hospital out with whatever it is they need. They can only do so much, but this is a hand up. This is not just a hand up to the citizen that needs the hand up. This is a hand up to the city, to the police department, to the people that are already dealing with these services and they don't know what to do with it. I'm just asking planning and zoning to say, hey, is this a legitimate use of this space? And listen to the constituents out here who all have very valid opinions and say, hey, what can we do to make this work? We're receiving a gift from some benefactors. What can we do to make this work? Is it a fence? Great. Is it sidewalks and safe access to get there? I don't know that that's going to happen if you're going to put it in an industrial place like Sal mentioned earlier. There's not a lot of places that have that. But come up with those ideas, take them to the city council and say, hey, we've got a gift. These are our reasonable expectations to make this use work where it is. And come up with those decisions tonight and say, hey, let's take that to city council and let's let them decide on it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'll keep my comments short. I'm Dr. David Chalk. I'm president of the Mercy Clinic here in Washington and been a resident of the community for 32 years. Again, I think the comments and the outlines you've seen tonight are all well posted. Really what I wanted to speak to the board is how does this affect the health care of our community? We are blessed with health care in a community the size of Washington that is almost second to none. Many communities our size have a fraction of the services that we're able to provide. One of the things that was determined by communities all around the country is that there are social determinants of health. We like to think the things that we do in the hospital and the clinic really determine how healthy a community and an individual is, when in fact, it's the social determinants of health. Your housing, your access to a food supply, and transportation plays about 70 to 75% of the influence on your overall health. And what we think we do fills in that 20% gap. Now, most of us in the room take all those other things for granted. But if you don't have those, that's a huge play on the ability to maintain a healthy lifestyle and a healthy life. Obviously, as the hospital and the clinic already, we deal with these people and everyone in our community on a daily basis. We've partnered with the city and others in the community around the extreme heat centers, but that's a short and very temporary ability to get them out of the cold, out of the extreme heat, and either whether it's in our facility or helping assist them find it elsewhere. The key here is a facility that goes to the next level. We have some of our community health workers here who see these people in our Macaulay Clinic, in our emergency room, in our hospital, that have nowhere place to go. They can connect this very, very vulnerable population to the resources. A temporary housing facility is just another piece of the puzzle to complete the continuum of healthcare resources that we are so very blessed in this community to have. I think we should seriously consider this special use permit as being another piece in that continuum of that puzzle. A short story, and this is really hit home. When I was approached by the board to become part of this, I jumped in with both feet because of a personal experience. Many years ago, my wife worked at Borgia. There was a student up there for a host of different reasons, could not live with her parents. This girl lived in her car for almost half a school year. And if she would have had, fortunately, it worked out for her. She went on, she got herself through school, and in fact, she's a nurse now. And she called my wife just within the last 6 months, and it was an amazing story. However, a facility like this would have been an easy place for this young lady to go to, because she did exactly what we talked about. She couch hopped, she slept in her car, went to class every day, and succeeded. Another piece of that puzzle, and it allows this community, to those people who need that step up, that hand up, not a hand out, a hand up, to go to the next level of their successes. So I would strongly urge planning and zoning to seriously consider the special use permit. It is another piece of the healthcare puzzle of this community that is so vital, and what makes this town and this community and area a great place to live and work. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Curtis, 7 Edward Place again, and this isn't so much a question about this permit, but what I think is important for this group, and maybe for you to be talking to the city council about, and if there are plans out there, it'd be nice to be able to figure out where I could be educated on it. But I think if you do approve this conditional use permit, one of the big pieces that they're going to be missing for them to be able to be successful in their mission is affordable housing. I did a quick look right before this started. It could have changed by now already, but just at a quick glance, there isn't a single home in Washington for sale for less than $150,000 that's habitable. There's one for $100,000, and it needs to be pushed over and taken to the dump. And the next step up from that is over $200,000. We also only have 3 places for rent in Washington right now. And I don't necessarily think that the answer is building more apartments, because really, to help people be successful in life, we need to help them become homeowners, ultimately. But I think that that is an important piece that if you approve this, that'll be what's potentially missing. And so if there are plans for that, it'd be great to know.
I will address that.
Okay.
Because we've been struggling for years on that here, trying to get more affordable housing. And we are still continuing to try to get something, more housing units starting. But we have done a lot already. In the apartments we do have, I think there's a lot of people that rather rent than own because they don't want to do the work.
I own some rentals here in town, and I totally know who those people are. I can tell you that there's the ones that I know rent because they have to, and then there's the ones who will always be a renter and they don't mind it at all. And the ones who rent because they have to, those are the ones I really, really feel for, because I wish that, you know, I could help them figure out a way to stop giving me money every month and start putting it in the equity of something that can be theirs, you know, in the future. So you're right, there's definitely both, but I also think that the population of people who would rather rent is also growing. But if you look at what rents have done in Washington over the last couple of years, and it's not nearly as bad here as in other parts of the country, it's, you know, gone up dramatically, because the rents for anything in town right now, the least expensive one out of the 3 available is $800 a month, which is, you know, that's substantial for somebody who's working close to minimum wage, $30,000, $40,000 a year, somewhere in there. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that you're working on it, and anytime you guys have anything you could share about that, I would love to know.
The
All right. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Danielle Lewis. I'm at 1298 West 9th Street. I worked for child welfare for almost 12 years. Currently, I work at the Family Resource Center in Union. I think people, if you work in social services or healthcare or with the police, you're not surprised by this, but other people would be shocked at how many children and families are currently homeless. Not necessarily unsheltered, but living with somebody else, moving from place to place, sleeping in their car. It is a pandemic, and it is in this area, and it is not going away. And there are a lot of good people working hard to fill in those gaps, but there is a missing piece, and that is a shelter for them to go. I'll give you an example of someone I worked with today, literally 5 hours ago. A couple, they lived between Union and Washington, made it over to our building, newly homeless for 2 weeks, sleeping in a tent, and she is pregnant. Newly pregnant, she was crying because she was trying to figure out a way to get to the doctor's office in Washington so she could see the doctor about her pregnancy. It is really heartbreaking having to work with people and being able to get them hygiene kits and tents, but not being able to have somewhere for them to go. These are people that want to work, they were working, they both lost their jobs, were in a bad situation, and now here they are. And it's a lot easier to be in that position than I think a lot of people think, especially when you don't have the support system. So having something like this in place would really just push Washington in the direction it needs to move. I think for most people, it's pretty obvious there's a lot of homeless people, but there's also an unseen level, and I think that is what this group is trying to target. Those people that are unseen, those people that it is really difficult for them to ask for help. They're newly homeless. They're on the verge of becoming homeless. And there's a lot of kids in our town that are at risk of being homeless right now. Like I said, this couple, it just happened. I just talked to them today and let them take a shower in our building because they had nowhere else to go. So I just really I just hope that everybody considers, I think if people have valid concerns and some valid fears about what this would look like, but I know that this group has worked really hard to think through those things, to kind of have some details planned out, and I think that they're open to new ideas as well. So I just really hope that this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was good. Somebody with her experience.
Any other comments, questions?
One more time. Greg Holbrook, I want to address some of the concerns I heard here tonight. And Sean, your points are very well made, and I would love to sit down specifically with you or anybody else with concerns and address them. But a lot of the concerns aren't land use. They're concerns of how we would operate it. And so I want to address this in two forms. I want to tell you something about myself. I've started and I've managed and I've run 14 successful businesses. I currently sit on the Board of Curators, which is a $4.6 billion a year operation. We have 73,000 employees. So I sit in your position. It's very easy to set for people to come up and tell us why we shouldn't do something. And the list gets longer, and the list gets longer, and the list gets longer. And if I sat there as a curator before I made a decision and addressed every possible conceivable concern that could come out of what we're going to do, we wouldn't do a thing. We wouldn't do a thing because there aren't that many answers. So what we do is we take the best information we have and then work very hard to implement it and implement it properly. This has been structured in a way that it will be implemented properly. I own the property. I own a lot of property in Franklin County, Union, 3 or 4 properties in Washington, Missouri. Drive by any of them. They're all well maintained. This will be well maintained. I have a property right down the street, CV Contractors. I own that property. It's well maintained. All my property will be well maintained. They have set up a separate board to run the fiduciary board. The board of directors of the fiduciary board were handpicked that they would do the right thing every time. They would do the right thing every time. And you know something? If they don't, I'll cancel the lease. So if somebody says, how do I know it's going to be right? I have the ability to stop it, and I will stop it. My name's associated with it. My reputation is associated with it. It will be done right, it will be continually done right, or it will be shut down. Are we going to have problems? Absolutely. Are they going to get it right the first time? No. But I can tell you, as I manage a lot of businesses far away, if you set the expectations and you hold people to those expectations, they will solve those problems. And that is what is going to happen in this operation. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Joe Kluba, 10 Chamber Drive. Mr. Holbrook, I agree with you. Your properties do look great. I'm your next one of your neighbors, so I don't doubt that one bit. Okay. Sean brought up a bunch of great ideas and points on what this piece of property is. I do agree with Mr. Holbrook. It's about the intent of the property. I really don't care how they're going to run it because I don't want anybody in my business doing what I do. I mean, that's a fair statement. But I am concerned of youth at the facility and the traffic that we have through that intersection. I don't know if anybody goes to the industrial parks at quitting time. Nobody abides by the speed limits and those types of things, okay? They're ready to get home and go do what they want to do. I am very concerned about the youth at the facility. You know, it's a great thing for our community. Is Washington the best answer? I don't know. Is the county the best answer? Where's the best resources for a piece of property like this? I think a couple of years ago this was proposed over by the hospital, and it wasn't M1, M2. Kind of everybody, Bob, you do a good job at what you do and find those loopholes and a technicality on a piece of commercial property. I believe this should be inside of our community, not on an outskirt, because this is the perimeter of Washington there. I think near the hospital, near the police department, near an educational institution. Has anybody looked at the old South Point location with that piece of property? You know, Greg, you build a lot of stuff. You do a great job with it. But trying to understand if this piece of property is best suited for that application. You know, we are an industrial park. Commercial entities are moving in and out. I agree that it could probably be run off-site. I don't care how they're going to run it. I'm more concerned with what the activities are around it. That's my major concern. You know, neighbors got a lot of equipment sitting outside that can be vandalized. We all do. I mean, our buildings, our lights, anything nowadays. I'm concerned about people cutting through the subdivision, Don Valley, behind us. There's hard to contain people in one spot without giving them something to do. The COVID already shown that when they're locked down, they're going to drive themselves literally crazy. They have to be able to get out, put a park in. I really don't care, but it's an issue with our youth because there's going to be young families that are there because those are the ones that are usually displaced the easiest by money. So that's all I have. I thank everybody for their comments.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments by board?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Greg, I know you're the property owner, but are you also on the committee to get this going?
I am not. I'm not a member of the fiduciary board. I wanted to keep a kind of an arm's length transaction on that so that I looked at it objectively, not emotionally.
But you probably know everyone on the board.
Yes, my wife.
And how many of them are there? How many people are on that board?
3 on the fiduciary board, and then they'll create an operating board to actually operate it, but the fiduciary board holds the power to make the decisions. And the 3 members of the fiduciary board are setting 1, 2, 3.
So, I'm sure they're all from Washington or the surrounding area, close, right?
Kim Bolin, and was it Mark, right? Marco from the hospital.
So they're all concerned about our fair city as well?
We are all concerned about this fair city.
All right.
I've lived here for 30 years, maybe 40 years. I've invested a lot of time and energy in this city. I found this comical. I had to laugh. And my wife and Kim have talked to several people, and somebody said, Greg Holbrook's been very generous to this community. Why is he sticking it to us now? And I go, I'm not sticking it to anybody. I see a need, and Karen Dawson brought that need to me. And Karen Dawson has a lot of influence on me because she was a great teacher at the high school. She had a huge impact on my children. And I saw in my conversations with the need, I got involved, there is a need, and I have the ability to help them, and that's all this is about.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a couple questions. First of all, addressing the transportation. Maybe Bob, I don't know if you can answer it, or one of the other ladies. When people come to your facility, they usually do not have their transportation. Is that a fair statement?
That's a big one there.
It's actually half and half.
Okay.
It really would be. It'd be half and half.
Okay, so how do they then get transportation from your facility to their places of employment? You mentioned some people walked.
Yes, some people have walked to our facility. I can tell you that just working with the homeless community and working very closely with some of the workers through Mercy, the community health workers through Mercy, many times when we've had to put folks up or families up at hotels and things of that nature, Mercy has been very generous to transport them, if they're coming from Mercy, with their security staff.
Okay. Then the other question I've got deals with the security of the kids. And I guess the question I have there is, would a fenced-in area be something that you should consider maybe, or is that not something that has been talked about, I guess, is a question.
So it has not something that has been talked about at this time, because I think we have not made those types of plans until we knew we were going to move forward.
Okay. And then the other question I have is for council. Mark, is it even possible in the code that we could put a condition of a 1-year review, that they would come back to us after a year and we could either reject or renew their special use permit?
No, we don't have anything in our code that would allow us to time limit a special use permit.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments by board?
I'll make a motion, we approve the special use permit with one condition, and that condition be that any outdoor area have a privacy fence.
Can we put that?
Mm-hmm. I'll second.
First and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
One. So moved. You got that?
Got it.
Okay. We are pretty narrow focused in what we do at planning and zoning. We don't get into necessarily how they're going to run it either. We have to look at the zoning and treat it almost like any other business and the effects on our community. So,
This is scheduled for City Council next Monday, the 19th, for an additional public hearing. It'll be very similar to this layout at that point. And we've already discussed with the mayor and I think administration, there will not be a vote that night. It'll just be a public hearing to hear from the public and review Planning and Zoning Commission, and it'll be placed on the next agenda. So.
all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yep, thank you. Everybody, thanks for behaving. Sal, you have anything else?
No, the comp plan's still moving forward well, so that's it.
All right, one last motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved.
I've been watching.
Tom, you should have got that hammer back out. Write him down.
Yeah, you should, I think, I'm pretty sure we need to,
Just
yeah,
about called
that
you,
we
but
should
I
have some that.
was busy with Sunday.
It was
when I went
withdrawn.
by, and I remembered that there wasn't a building there. So, well, I haven't been there for a couple of weeks. Maybe they started some.
Okay.
I was gonna call you, but I didn't want to break it.
Oh.
It met all of the conditions that the city set forth under what a special use permit should be used for.